And Wendy Grimes was just one of the red statewide candidates that Democrats were most excited by this cycle. One of the others is Texas State Senator Wendy Davis, who is running for governor, who, unlike Grimes, is losing by some big margins. Latest polling has her down by 11 points to Texas State Attorney General Greg Abbott. In a deep red state, the president lost by almost 16 points last cycle. She's apparently decided if she's going to go down, she's going to go down swinging, as evidenced by an ad she ran against Texas State Attorney General Greg Abbott, who was hit by a tree while jogging 30 years ago and has been in a wheelchair ever since.
A tree fell on Greg Abbott. He sued and got millions. Since then, he spent his career working against other victims. Greg Abbott, he's not for you.
That ad, I think understandably, got a lot of flack from across the political spectrum, but over the weekend, Davis defended the message.
The intent was to demonstrate Greg Abbott's hypocrisy. He rightfully had an opportunity to access the justice system when he was at the receiving end of a tragic accident. But ever since, he's been actively fighting to close that door and deny that access to others.
Again today, the Davis campaign was doubling down on the ad. Earlier this afternoon, Davis appeared at an event next to two supporters in wheelchairs to highlight what she says is Abbott's hypocrisy. Joining me now from Austin, Texas, is Evan Smith, CEO and editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. Evan, this ad's gotten a lot of national attention. I'm curious how it's playing in Texas.
Not a whole lot better. I think that a lot of people on the right and some even on the left are jumping at Davis, not so much for the substance of the ad, but for the tactic of using the image of the empty wheelchair at the beginning of the ad. That's seen as maybe touching the third rail, not something that was particularly smart or politic for her to do. But what's gotten lost is the substance of the ad. She's been taking hits, as I said, mostly for the tactic.
Yeah, and what struck me about the ad, and I sort of had the same kind of cringe reaction a lot of people had, is that you could cut off the first 3 seconds and run the next 27 seconds, and it's a perfectly, you know, I mean, it's an attack ad, it's a negative ad, but it's basically like, look, this guy's not siding with you, he's not helping other people. Of course, if you do that, then the natural rebuttal is going to be like, really? You're going after this guy himself who's in a wheelchair? And so maybe this was some kind of preemptive way of rebutting that, but the way it ends up coming off is, I think, a little tough to stomach.
Let me say it a little bit differently. She has been running a series of ads in which she's alleged that Abbott is not for the average Texan, but is working on behalf of powerful friends or insiders, and no one's paid attention. If you cut off the first of this ad, the one that's gotten all the attention, no one would be talking about this ad. I wouldn't be here talking to you about this ad. It would be just another ad. We have entered the Doug Flutie phase of this campaign. It's the fourth quarter. We're in 4-down territory. She's losing the game. She's got to put the ball in the end zone. That's what she's done here. Might get caught, might not.
And, yes, and politics ain't beanbag, as they say. So, I mean, you know, this is, you know, I guess all's fair in love, war, and politics. But why is it the case? I mean, Matt Iglesias had a funny tweet today. He said, you know, Wendy Davis's biggest problem is that Texas voters are very conservative, #analysis, which cracked me up. Yeah. Is that fundamentally the issue here? I mean, she's on tough territory, or has this campaign not lived up to the expectations?
Can I choose both?
Yes.
I think the answer is both. On the one hand, she was always pushing a big rock up a big hill in a state that's not just red, but is blood red. Any Democrat, anybody running statewide for the last 20 years, has really been the underdog by a significant margin, and even Wendy Davis going into this race was going to be the underdog. The campaign has not been prosecuted flawlessly, which was a necessary condition of her being competitive in this race. And I think this latest thing, which you can sort of see the first 3 seconds of this ad being something of an unforced error, the substance of the ad notwithstanding, the tactic is a little bit of an unforced error. I would say it's another example of how this has not gone exactly up to expectations. She's done everything she possibly can to stay in this race and to be competitive. But in the end, as you said, the polls are not looking very good. She could conceivably lose this race by more than Bill White in 2010 against Rick Perry, which just a few months ago would have been unthinkable.
What does this mean for Democrats? I mean, I want to write the obituary yet. We got 3 weeks. Lots can happen.
It'll only be over on Election Day, as the cliche goes.
Right, and then that's a very true cliche, as we've seen time and time again. I mean, everyone thought that Todd Akin was going to be the next senator from Missouri. So, you know, a lot can happen, a lot gets said down the stretch. What does it mean, though, for Democrats in Texas? How central has this race been into the effort to build a stronger Democratic Party in Texas?
Well, the reality is the Battleground Texas effort, which was the marshaling of the Obama 2012 forces in Texas to try to turn the state purple, if they couldn't turn it blue, at least get it closer, was always said to be a long game.
Right.
And so 2014 wasn't necessarily their focal point. Now there are some people saying, well, if we don't get Wendy Davis into the governor's office, this is really about 2016. It's really about Hillary. The reality is there's been more talk of Democrats being competitive than there has been any visible signs of competitiveness. On the other hand, until Battleground came and until Wendy Davis became the nominee, the Democrats were absolutely dead in the water.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter what happens in 2014. It is improvement over what we've seen for the last 2 decades.
And what's striking to me, particularly when you compare it to Kentucky, in Kentucky the margin was bigger in the presidential, but Kentucky does have statewide elected Democrats. The governor, Beshear, and London Grimes herself is a statewide elected Democrat. That's not true in Texas, where there hasn't been a statewide elected Democrat since Ann Richards, if I am not mistaken.
Indeed, 94 was the last time we elected a Democrat
And
statewide.
fascinatingly enough, has smaller margins in the presidential, which means that it's possible that those kind of trajectories continue to diverge a little bit. Evan Smith, always a pleasure. Thank you.